It's time once again to slip into your camo, grab your bow, and join us out in the field for another episode of the Up North Journal, presented by PSE Archery. The Up North Journal crew is knocked and ready to rock for another exciting adventure, so let's step outside and hit the trail.
This episode of the Up North Journal podcast is brought to you by
PSE Archery, Yamaha Outboards, Better the Hunt, Easy Cut, Packer Max, Deer Camp Coffee, Buck Baits, JPO Game Calls, Limwalker Game Calls, Wild Seasoning, Total Peep, Sunrise Archery, Scent Lock, and Scent Blocker.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Another week of Up North Journal Live.
Another year.
Another year, another season.
Another season. Welcome to 2022.
It's been a few weeks since the last time we talked. Hopefully everybody had a good Christmas, had a good New Year. Was Santa good to you?
Santa was pretty good to me.
Well, that's good. I'm glad.
You know?
You didn't blow any fingers off during New Year's, lighting fireworks, nothing like that?
Nope. It was nice, peaceful, quiet. It was enjoyable.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's the way it should be. So, man, people are piling into the cabin already. Nice.
That's what happens when you have a great guest that's going to be on.
That's right. Yeah, we're going to rock it tonight.
You know what? And speaking of great guests, he is the first guest of 2022, which makes this what?
16th season, episode 1 of this year.
There you go.
Or episode 628.
Right.
So, but no, we had a good Christmas. Had the kids over, and everybody is healthy. Everybody made it through, and yeah, can't complain.
Absolutely. Mark Coleman's in the house.
Mark Coleman is always in the house. Mark, we're going to hopefully see you here soon. We might be able to make it down to Indiana, down to the Deer and Turkey Spectacular down there. We were actually just talking about it, so we will see.
That's right.
All right, let me get back on our page, and let's get this thing rocking tonight.
Let's do it.
And if I can find it here, I got my shares out of the way. Get the record going over here on the other side. And we will kick off season number 16. Alrighty. And it's recording. Here we go. Stand by. And in 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back to another episode of the Up North Journal, everybody. I'm host Mike Adams, sitting in the cabin tonight on a blustery, snowy night with Dan DeFaul, who finally made it up here.
Yeah, no kidding. Talk about going a little slow.
Yeah?
But I made it in for the first show of 2022. And for the people listening on the podcast, that makes this the start of the 16th season.
Man, I tell you, it just seems like 16 seasons ago we started this.
Right. There's been a few, well, it goes back to what we were asked last year by, I think Mr. Mark Coleman asked us about writing that book.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of ups and downs in those 16 seasons.
That's right. Yeah, it's not all cake and ice cream here, so.
You got it.
But
So,
we're going to have fun tonight, for sure.
absolutely.
Well, let's take care of some of people who take care of us and get the promo codes that we've got for 2022.
With more to come.
There you go.
So, with that being said, folks, remember, Buck Baits. They've got Deer Camp Outfitters as well. They do have a brick and mortar store in Sterling Heights, Michigan at 15 and Dodge Park. Get down there and go see Julie and the gang down there. And if you use ordering online and you go to buckbaits.com, and if you do promo code UNJ20, you'll get 20% off your order at checkout.
They got some good treats down there in the store, too.
They got a bunch of new treats in that store. Let me tell you that. And I tell you what, JPO Game Calls. We're going to see them here at the end of the month over on the west side of the state. He's making calls frantically. And if you want 10% off your order when you check out over there at jpogamecalls.com, use the promo code UNJ10. And tonight, wouldn't be amiss if we weren't drinking Deer Camp coffee. And we're drinking
Wall hanger, because it's one of those type of nights. It's cold and blustery. I got out the strong stuff.
There you go. And I tell you what, use the promo code UNJ10 over at deercampcoffee.com. You'll get 10% off your order over there.
So,
but if you come to my screen now, we can take a quick peek up in Newberry, where it is a nice 7 degrees. And I think it would be time at 7 degrees to go over to Cedars and get a pizza and some Deer Camp coffee.
That's right. I think that's what somebody's doing right now. I do see a car on the street.
Right, exactly.
The lone car on the street.
So get over there up in Newberry, check them out, go enjoy a pizza.
There you go. Well, I'll tell you what, we got that out of the way. I say we just jump right into this and we introduce our guest. And tonight we have none other than an avid kayaker out of the Detroit area, Mike Rudell. Mike, what is going on, my man? How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, man, thanks for being here. It's finally putting a name to a face. We talk on Facebook back and forth quite a bit, and you run a kayaking page over there. But before we get too deep into this, we want to know a little bit about your background and how did you get started into kayaking? What was the big push to get into kayaking like you are now?
Yeah, I've always really loved the outdoors, and I used to do a lot of backpacking and camping and hiking and things like that. And about 6 years ago, I got into kayaking. I saw some people doing it, and I rented a boat from a local outfitter, and I got in there, and I just fell in love right away. I love the exercise aspect of it, being in nature, and just everything about it. I really like.
Well, you mentioned the outdoors, so obviously there's a little more to you than just kayaking about the outdoors. Actually, we talked a little bit about that before the show. What are some of the things that you get out and do?
Wow. Well, I love to just hike, and I do a lot of trail running. Anywhere where there's green space, you'll see me exploring it. So I like to mountain bike a lot as well. Canoeing, kayaking. Those are kind of my main activities.
Did you grow up doing that, or is this something you just kind of came into as you got older?
That's an interesting question. So I'm a city boy. Growing up in Detroit, we didn't have a lot of opportunities for that, but I always had an interest in it. I was always the kid that when mom told us to go outside and play, I took off and I went and found whatever woods were nearby. So I've always had an interest in the outdoors for sure. But as I've kind of gotten older and life has just gotten more busy and complicated, it's become a refuge for me to kind of get away from everyday life.
We tell people that so much when we try to introduce people into the outdoors, whether it be hunting, fishing, camping, kayaking, whatever. They don't understand until they get out there and they're like, wow, man, this is so cool. Where has this been all my life? It definitely opens a lot of different possibilities for things that people to do that they never even really thought of.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, for me, there's a peace and a serenity that comes with it. I mean, we were chatting before the show. I feel more at home when I'm out in the woods or in a boat than I do when I'm on land. It's just a comforting feeling to be out in nature.
Well, it's one of those things when you're out there, wherever you might be out in nature, it's just that solitude that you get and that peace and quiet where you get to the point where your ears start to ring and you're not worried about a semi running you over at 75 miles an hour. And
yeah, right.
And then you can sit back and reflect on the week, the month, the year, and you just go into it and you go, this is nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, or this time of year, you don't have to worry about getting hit by a snowplow.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and speaking of the snow and the cold weather, we're going to get into this a little bit in the next segment, but that's what we're here to talk about tonight is cold water kayaking and cold water safety and the gear that goes along with it. But, kind of getting back to how you got started and everything. So being that, you're in southeastern Michigan, I got to imagine that, did you start on the rivers? Did you start, Detroit River or Lake St. Clair? Where did you start cutting your teeth on the water?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So when I first, started paddling and I realized I liked it, I went to a local sporting goods store and bought one of those couple $100 plastic Pelican kayaks. Mm-hmm. And I decided that I was going to paddle on a local river called the Rouge River. You might have heard of the Rouge Plant.
Yep.
And in Melvindale there. And so I put in on the Rouge River and I paddled 6 miles out to the Detroit River.
Okay.
And I had no idea what I was doing. And as I came into the Detroit River, a huge freighter was coming out of the Rouge plant. And you guys, the water was so crazy, the waves were so high, I was absolutely terrified. I could not control this 10-foot kayak. I was spinning around in circles, getting pushed. It's a miracle I didn't flip over. And I remember getting pushed up against Zug Island, which is this, like, you know, industrial island in the river. And there were these big tires that the ships would park up against. And I grabbed one of those tires with both hands. I took my paddle apart and put it in the boat, and I'm holding this tire, and I'm thinking, if I get out of this alive, I got to get a bigger boat.
So the question I have about that is, you know, you said you did canoeing.
Yes.
Why did you make the jump over to kayaking? Was it just the progression, or how did that work?
This is a great question, too. So I started as a kayaker. I only recently, about a year and a half ago, got into canoeing.
Okay, so you actually went the other way. All right.
Yeah, and I love them both for kind of different and the same reasons. Canoeing, I mean, for me, I kayak so much that sometimes, like, my arms and my shoulders will hurt. And canoeing is a completely different motion. It works different muscles, and you can't go as fast. So it sort of forces me to slow down a little bit. And if I'm on a smaller river with a lot of log jams and stuff, a canoe is actually a lot easier to maneuver than a kayak. You can hop right out on top of the log jam if you're adventurous and pull your canoe over and jump right back in a lot easier than you can with a kayak.
Okay, so that's a benefit to a kayak or a canoe over a kayak when you're going down a river.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
So your equipment, we're taking a look at some of your pictures that you sent in for us to show. Like now, okay, so I'm looking at a blue kayak now. What's your equipment there that you have?
Yeah, so, and I brought some gear if you want to see, but I guess I can start, I'll talk about boats. So I have 3 kayaks and a canoe right now. And they're all very different, and they're for very different things. So the picture that you have up, the blue boat, that is what they call a touring or recreational kayak. And that one is it's made by a company called Wilderness, and it's called a Tsunami. And it's a great boat. Michael's shaking his head. 14 and a half feet long. And that thing is great because it's small enough that you can take it on those smaller rivers, but it's also nimble enough and fast enough that you can take it out on big water. I've had that thing in Lake Erie in 2.5, 3 foot waves. I've had it on the Detroit River. You can put a lot in that boat, and it's very utilitarian. The downside for me, just a guy who likes to go fast, it's not as fast as a sea kayak, you know, but it's very stable, and you can put a lot of gear in it. So, and it's plastic, so I don't mind dragging it through the woods if I have a long portage or something like that. It's a good all-around boat.
Okay, so with that being said, you've got these kayaks here. A question coming in on the chat from Mark Coleman is, how difficult is it to kayak upstream when in a creek/river versus using a canoe?
Yeah, so, you know, people will ask me that, and it kind of depends. A lot of it depends on your motor, which, I mean, the person. Everybody's different. Some people have that stamina and that energy. I find it's easier to go upstream in a kayak than it is in a canoe. Okay, simply put, if you're going upstream in a canoe, it's a lot more work. With a kayak, you've got the paddle in both sides of the water, whereas the canoe, you know, you're really only on one side. Now, some people that are really fast and good canoeists, they might be able to keep up with a kayaker going upstream, but most people can't.
Well, talking about getting back to your gear, your red kayak.
Yeah, so the red kayak, that's her name is Hot Dog.
You got her named.
She's named Hot Dog for a couple of reasons. That kayak is a Valley Sea kayak. They're made in England, and the model is a Sorona. And it's a fiberglass boat. It's just over 16 and a half feet long, and it weighs about 53 pounds. Mm-hmm. So it's very light, and it's very fast. It's not a beginner boat. In fact, when I put people in it that aren't really kayakers, they almost immediately tip or feel like they're going to tip.
Right.
It's not, you know, it takes them getting used to. But it's a great boat, and I call her Hot Dog because She's red on top with a white bottom, and then it has all the deck lines are yellow, so it looks like mustard.
Gotcha.
So, but also because she's really fast. I mean, you ask my friends that go with me, and I joke about it. Sometimes I can't control it. It just wants to go fast.
Well, yeah, if you were with us, then you take off and leave us, because I'm always in the back taking photos, looking at nature. Nancy's always yelling at me, "Come on, let's go, let's go."
You're sightseeing.
I'm sightseeing,
Calm down, Nancy.
So, okay, but you said you had a third boat as well.
Yeah, so it's that little. I don't know if I sent you a picture, but these boats are ubiquitous. You see them everywhere. It's a 10-foot plastic boat made by Pelican. It's called a Trailblazer.
Okay.
And it's a great boat. It's super short, super wide, very stable.
Mm-hmm.
Great for small creeks and rivers, but it's not a big water boat. It doesn't track well. It doesn't go straight very well. It takes a lot of effort to move it forward. But you can just really beat it up. I mean, I have dragged that thing through some woods and over log jams, so it's a great boat for the smaller water. The problem with that boat is if you're in water that's over your head and you fall out of that boat, it's almost impossible to get back in.
Right.
It's just too wide. There's no flotation. So if it fills with water, I mean, there's a little bit of styrofoam in the front, but if that thing fills with water, it's going to sink.
Gotcha.
Whereas those other two have those closed compartments, those bulkheads that will keep the boat from sinking, which is important.
Okay.
Well, that's awesome.
Well, I'll tell you what, we burned about 15 minutes here. We're going to take a quick break. We come back. I want to we just left off with different boat sizes. Let's use that to kind of springboard into what we're going to use in different situations, cold water. And you mentioned, a beginner getting into a boat such as the sea kayak versus somebody who's seasoned. We'll talk about some of those things, and we'll start down the road, or let's start down the river, as they say, when we come back. We're going to step outside. We'll be right back after this. All right. Huh? Hey, we got to stay with the theme here, man. Come on.
Well, I'm. All right, folks. Any questions? Throw them in the chat. We'll ask away. Mark Coleman says he's reading the book, The Hunting Camp, and he thanks you for recommending it.
Good. Mark, we're going to have him on next week. The author of
that book will be on the show next Thursday. So, Mark, you better be back.
And you better have read that book.
Right? Because you will be tested at 7:30.
Yeah, you didn't know there was going to be a test at the end of the show, did you?
Right?
I got too much stuff here in my way. I take 2 weeks off from doing the show, and everything is just out of sorts in the room here, in the cabin. All right, we're almost ready for a second segment here. For those of you who are watching for the first time, that maybe you found us from one of the kayaking pages, what we're doing, we also record our audio off of this feed, and we turn it into a podcast. So there'll be a podcast version of this as well. So, and actually, the links here will stay up on our page. You can share them. So hopefully, we're going to give you some good news or good information tonight that everybody can use.
We got some good questions popping in the chat already.
Good deal. Let me save this off and open a new one, and we'll get going here. I feel like something's just not quite in line here tonight. Everything's kind of misaligned.
Snow outside?
No. I'm just saying everything. I've moved some stuff, and it's just I'm getting used to it here. Here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back. Second segment of the show. And when we left you, we were talking about different size kayaks, purposes for them, beginners, seasoned, intermediate users. But tonight we really want to maybe use those things to springboard into cold water kayaking.
Exactly. But one of the questions does have to do with size of kayak. And the question is, what size do they consider to be a sea kayak?
That's a really great question. So sea kayaks typically, start at 16 feet. That's considered an entry-level sea kayak. Some people might, tell you different. What I like to tell everyone, if you're going to go on what I call big water, this is water with current, water that's over your head, that has waves, you want to use a boat. It doesn't necessarily have to be a sea kayak, but you want to use a boat that's at least 12 feet long and that has double bulkheads. And there's a couple reasons for that. The longer the boat is, the more of it that's in the water, so the easier it is to control. And then having those double bulkheads that are sealed ensures that in the event of a capsize, the cockpit might fill up with water, but that boat's not going to sink.
Right.
So hopefully that answers that question.
Well, you brought up a good point that I did not know. Talking about double bulkhead, I've got a pungo, a wilderness pungo, and it's got the one in the back with the sealed bulkhead. But I didn't realize that you also need one on the front. I mean, which makes sense now that I think about it.
For safety's sake, what I always tell people, because people go out there with a single bulkhead, I don't recommend it. What I tell people to do is on a nice warm summer day, go out into the water, maybe chest deep, have a friend with you, and fall out of that boat and let the cockpit fill up with water. And more than likely what's going to happen is the end that does not have a bulkhead is going to sink into the water.
Gotcha.
So you're going to have but the only way, for people to see that is to actually try it.
Okay.
Well, that's it, right? Get to know your equipment, knows how it works and everything, and go from there. And now you've got the boat, but you haven't talked about paddles. Are paddles important? Or
Yes, yeah. I'm going to share with you, I have it here, I'll share my paddle. There's lots of different kinds of paddles that you can use. Now, typically, the lighter the paddle, the better it's going to be for you, right? You're going to have less fatigue and you'll be able to go faster. This is my favorite paddle in the whole world, and I'm not plugging them because, whatever, but it's called a Werner. It's by a company called Werner, and it's called the Caliste, and it's a carbon fiber paddle, and if I remember correctly, it weighs 223 grams. Everyone that I have that picks this thing up goes, I can't believe how light it is.
Right.
And it's a low angle paddle, so it's not going to be as hard on the chest and shoulders. And if you see how big the blade is,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the recreational paddles are a lot smaller, so you don't get as much in the water. You can really fly with something like this and also go for a long distance. Mike and I were talking about paddling, 15, 16, 17 miles. If you do that with a cheaper, heavy paddle, you're really going to feel it as opposed to a lightweight, carbon paddle.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will. And I don't have a carbon paddle, but I got a fiberglass one now.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. I mean, everything in kayaking is expensive. The better the gear, the more it costs. So you just sort of you build your way. I mean, when I started, I just had a $40 paddle, Field and Stream paddle from Dick's Sporting Goods, and I used that for a year, and it worked.
Well, that's one of the nicest things about kayaking is the entry level price points that you can get just to get out on the water are really affordable for just about everyone. And then from that point on, if you choose you want to go further, hey, sky's the limit, right?
Right.
Oh, it really is. Yeah. That's a good thing, but it's kind of a scary thing, too, because some people will see someone like me out on the water in Hot Dog on the Detroit River looking like he's having the time of his life and then think, hey, for a couple $100, I can do the same thing.
Right.
And they don't realize, the amount of training that goes into that, all the safety precautions, and I'm a big gear person, having the right gear depending on what kind of paddling you're doing. So
exactly. And speaking of that, before we get into all the safety thing, what would be the question is, what is the most important safety tip when solo kayaking? Because you said you go out there a lot on your own.
The most important is your PFD, your life jacket, your personal flotation device. I'll show you mine real quick. There's lots of different kinds out there. And again, I'm not plugging anyone in particular, but I love this one. It's by Kokatat, and it's called the Outfit. And it's designed for kayakers. There's different life jackets out there. And when I first started, I just had this uncomfortable one that didn't cost a lot, but it really hurt every time I moved my arms, and I got a little rash under my arms. This particular one is made for kayakers. It's got a lot of pouches to put different things in there. I also have an emergency water-activated light. If I fall in the water, that will turn on, so I'm visible. And, this is the most important piece of safety gear, in my opinion. And often people don't wear it. They might have it on the boat, I say you always have it on.
Well, yeah, it's something we've talked about, Nancy and I have talked about quite a bit. People like to match different things to their kayak, the same color. My Pungo is blue, and I was like, I do not want a blue life jacket because you can't see it. If you need to be rescued in the water, like say you're out in a big water and you fall overboard, and you got to signal Coast Guard or somebody else to get you, they have a hard time finding you.
You're so right, Mike. I'm not a bright color guy except when it comes to paddling, because you want those bright yellows, those bright reds, those bright oranges, because like you said, you want to be visible. If you're wearing earth tones or you're wearing blues or green's my favorite color, but you wear those things and it makes you a lot harder to spot in the event of a rescue.
Absolutely. We've went so far as putting reflective tape on the blades or on the handle of our paddles. Just another thing that a potential rescue person could see and help to find you as well. So,
yeah.
When you're going out there to purchase all this stuff, another question I'm seeing, what is the average lifespan of a kayak? Is there a lifespan? Are they indefinite, or what would you say? Hey, I've been using this for X amount. Maybe I should look into a new one.
I mean, I guess that's personal. All of my boats have dents, cracks, and scratches, but it's because I use them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not showpieces. They're not sitting, but they work. So, and even a cheap kayak, I mean, my cheapest one, it was well made, and it does well. So, I mean, as long as it's not leaking and you can paddle it, or it's not broken, it works like you want. I can't really put I know people who paddle 25, 30-year-old sea kayaks that do just fine. So, I mean, my canoe that I have is 40 years old, and it's a great canoe. So
it sounds like to me like in typical fashion, if you take care of your equipment, it'll last.
Yeah, there is some maintenance, and I'll tell you, I'm not somebody who likes to do this stuff, but you learn how to maintain your boats and the things that you do. I carry a small toolkit that has a Leatherman, and I have wrenches and screwdrivers to adjust the bolts and the straps and things like that. And you just learn how to do that as you get more into paddling.
Yeah, well, and Jim says here, he says the problem often is that someone doesn't know what they don't know, and that's part of the learning process of what you're talking about.
Yes.
And that's one thing we want to, like I said, we want to impart tonight is about this cold weather stuff, because I've done a little bit, just a little bit of cold water paddling, and you seems like you're out almost every day when we look on the forum, but you've got a lot of experience in this, and but we talked last week a little bit, and you said your skill set, what you don't know can kill you. You need to be aware of the temperature, what you're wearing, your gear. There's so much that goes into this, and let's use the rest of the show to kind of touch on this and start getting people educated a little bit about how do you go about getting prepared, or telling somebody that wants to do cold water kayaking, where do you start with it?
Yeah, that's such a great topic, and I could talk about it for a long time because there's a lot of facets. So I'll start off by saying that everything that's dangerous about being on the water is magnified in the winter. It can be very, very deadly. Something that could be a lot of fun in the summer could turn real scary real quick. So the general rule is you should never paddle in winter with less than 3 paddlers. Now, I don't always follow that rule. Again, I'm not an instructor. I'm not an expert. I'm just a guy who paddles. But the reason why you should always have 3, if something goes wrong with someone, you've got 2 people to help. And then if one of those people needs to go away and get help, then you have that option. When you're on your own, or even just with another friend, all of those things that could go wrong kind of get magnified. So when you're thinking about cold water paddling, I don't suggest you try it alone. In fact, the first time I went out cold water paddling, I was with 11 experienced people.
Okay.
And so, even I didn't try it on my own. The other big thing is you have to be warm, obviously, and it's a lot harder to stay warm on the water. So it's all about the clothing. I do have some stuff I can show you what I wear. Again, it's different for everybody, and you can experiment with different things. And you also should always have backup clothes. Don't just go out there with what you're wearing. Always have something extra. I'm a dry suit guy. I'm not going to go out in winter without a dry suit. Now, a lot of people don't have a dry suit because they can be very expensive, and a lot of people find them uncomfortable. So there's other options too if you're not going to go out on big water. My general rule is if I'm in water over my head, I'm putting a dry suit on.
Okay.
So,
Well, that makes perfect sense, right? And as Nancy points out, you dress for the water temperature,
Yes,
not
yes.
the air temperature.
yeah, so, and that's the thing. Definitely. You know, like right now, I'll just use the Detroit River as an example. It's about 38 degrees, that water. Obviously, it's freezing cold outside, but this is Michigan. It could be 50 in a couple of days, but that water temperature is still very cold. So, you know, I always tell folks to dress for immersion.
We got a piece of video here that shows you talking about, you know, we're talking about cold water paddling, but also it can be cold or cool in the fall or the spring, or even in the summer when it's raining, and you can get in trouble.
Yes, yeah. So this that picture you just had up, that was a late summer day, and it was quite cool, and it was raining, and then what happened is this really dense fog moved in and just cut my visibility right down. You could see it starting to move in.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to know that stretch of water really well, so I knew what to do, but if I wasn't familiar with that, it would have been really easy to get disoriented.
And hypothermia can be a real problem even in that type of weather, right?
Yep, even in that type of weather. So this video is just from, I want to say, about a month ago. So it was late fall, and it's on the Detroit River, going into right near Lake St. Clair. And I would say, you know, the waves were about 1.5 feet. They weren't anything crazy, but real strong wind and current coming at me there. And I wanted to take a little video, and I have the phone kind of secured on my deck with the handle of my bilge pump, so it's not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wanted to show people, you know, what it can look like out there.
Well, plus that also shows you, in typical Michigan fashion, how weather can also change as quickly as, you know, as the current can when you're out there, right? You get out there and it might be smooth, and all of a sudden you get into situation like this.
And that's what happened. It started out smooth, but you never know when you're on bigger water, especially like the Great Lakes or any of the larger connecting rivers that feed out into those Great Lakes. It can be very unpredictable. So you kind of have to, you got to make sure that you're prepared for all that, even if it doesn't happen.
Well, talk a little bit about skill set as far as when you go out. I got to assume you don't take out a new beginner kayaker in cold water. I mean, to me, that doesn't seem like the smart thing to do.
Right. Yeah, so I don't take any beginners out really at all in winter, ever. I take beginners out in the summer and on smaller water to get them used to it. I think if you're going to go in big water, you should definitely know how to do at least a wet exit and re-entry. So you should know how to fall out of your boat in such a way that you can get back in it, and there's different techniques, and you should practice those techniques often, you know, with friends and even on your own if you're able. I practice on my own, and I practice with friends. So especially if you're going to be out there solo, you need to know how to get back into your boat if you're somewhere where you can't easily get to shore. And as you can see here, I wouldn't be able to swim to shore.
Mm-hmm.
in these situations. So it's really important to know how to get back in that boat, and then what to do when I'm in it, how to get the water out, you know, making sure that all my gear is secure to my boat. Another important safety thing on big water are these marine radios.
Mm-hmm.
So this thing here, you know, it does a lot of things, but the most important thing on it is right here, this distress signal. You register this thing with the U.S. Coast Guard, and if all you do is press this button, it sends the Coast Guard your exact location.
So it's GPS as well. I got you.
GPS enabled. And if you're with other paddlers and, you know, you have people that might be behind or go faster, you can communicate with them. You can also communicate with other ships, and you can get weather alerts, which is really important. I've been out there on a beautiful summer day on Lake Erie, and then all of a sudden this thing starts going crazy, and it's the weather service saying there's a storm moving in. I've gotten off the water, secured my boat, and walked back to my car before the thunderstorm started.
There you go. Yeah, especially on Lake Erie, it's so shallow. Those waves come up quick, especially in a high wind situation with a storm.
Yeah, Lake Erie is can get very scary very quick because it is shallow, and a lot of people think because it's shallow, it's not as scary as like a Superior or a Huron. But like you said, when it's shallow like that and you get the long wind drafts that come across that lake, it gets nasty real quick.
And yeah, like you said, it doesn't take long. I've heard of people getting in bad situations, even like in a regular boat, you know,
right?
Where they can get swamped out there. So I tell you what, let's take another break. We come back, we'll continue the conversation, and let's talk a little bit maybe when we come back about how you prepare as far as your attire, layering up and things of that nature, and why that's important.
Sounds great.
All right, we're going to step outside, take our next break, and we'll be right back after this.
Keep the chat going, for folks. It's being great in the chat today. Of note, Florida, of all places, has the greatest incidence of hypothermia.
Really?
That's what Jim Palermo is saying.
Nice. I'm glad it's not Michigan. It's not nice, I guess, but I mean, it's just good information. Well, you know, everybody thinks it's warm down there. You know,
well, it is.
It's warm, but you know,
water.
You know, I remember there was a time we were up in Mackinac, and there was two kids that were on this huge raft. I mean, gigantic raft, and they pushed out from Wilderness State Park. Well, the current caught them, and away they went, and they were lost in Lake Michigan.
Oops.
And they found them the next day when they drifted underneath the Mackinac Bridge. And the kids, I mean, they were out there a good 12, 16 hours. You know, they made it all the way through the night. All they had on was their swim trunks and a life jacket. And hypothermia had set in. I mean, it dang near killed them. And they weren't even in the water.
Well, nope, exactly.
So, you just got to, like Nancy said, prepare for the water temperature, not the air temperature. All righty. Forget which mouse I'm using here.
Don't do that. Come on now.
I'm getting there. Like I said, it's just taking a while to get used to where I've moved everything back around.
Get you back in the groove.
I know it. You know, it's kind of like the exercising thing. When you get out of the groove for a while, you get kind of discombobulated. So, yeah, okay. You got a lot of questions coming in?
There's a few. There's some tips and coming in and a couple of questions. Santa brought Nancy a radio.
Yeah, actually, you know, Mike was talking about the one he's got there. Nancy got one then from Santa Claus. So,
just don't hit the red button.
No, not unless you need it. All right, here we go. All right, stand by in 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back. Third segment of the show, talking about some cold water kayaking. Before we went to the break, I said we come back. We're going to talk a little bit about. You had mentioned that if you're in water over your head, cold water or big water, that you wear a dry suit.
Yes.
I've got a 2-piece wetsuit that I use, and then I use like a water shedding light apparel over top of that when it's a little cooler weather. Talk about what, you know, a wetsuit versus dry suit, you know,
Yeah.
and how that all works.
Great question. And again, these are just my opinions based on personal experience because
Sure.
people feel different ways. But so a wetsuit, what a wetsuit does is a wetsuit traps a layer of moisture between your body and the neoprene and warms it to your body temperature. But you're wet. And in my opinion, a wetsuit is no good if that water temperature is under 55 degrees. You're going to freeze. So that's why I always, you know, wetsuits are tricky. I wear them sometimes in the spring and the fall when that water temperature is greater than 55, but you're starting to see some cooler air temps.
Okay.
But I want to talk about, if it's okay, my dry suit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this dry suit that I have is 12 years old, and I've had it for 6. So I bought it used, and they do require, you know, maintenance and things like that. But this one is a 1-piece dry suit. It's by Kokatap. You can tell I love their gear. Maybe they should pay me.
They should.
But it's called the Meridian, and it's a great dry suit. So you get into it from the front. It's got a front relief zipper. It's got solid booties on the bottom, and then it has these latex wrist gaskets and neck gaskets. So no water is going to get in here at all. It is tight on you.
Okay.
But it doesn't insulate you. You need to make sure that you layer underneath it. And again, that's different for everybody too. You have to just experiment and get to know your body. If any of my friends are watching, they're going to laugh because they know how much I love this. This is a dry suit liner, and it's called the Habanero. And it's like a onesie, like what the old Union soldiers wore, back in the day.
Right.
And this thing is extremely warm. So I wear this under the dry suit, and you can layer with that. Anything that you wear on the water that I wear, it's non-cotton, it's wicking, and it's breathable. So it's really important that you do that. And again, I always carry a full bag of dry clothes in case the dry suit rips, something happens. I also like to carry always with me a paddle jacket that you can place over everything that you're wearing to keep you warm and dry. That's huge. And then, head, hands, and feet. That's huge, okay? You want some really warm socks. Again, non-cotton, but you want like a thick, these are Carhartt socks, but the brand doesn't matter. There's lots of brands out there, but this is like something that you would wear when you were going to go trekking in the woods in deep snow. You want a nice thick sock, and this is underneath the dry suit. And then over that, I wear these little booties, and these are 3mm neoprene. So they do insulate, but again, my bare foot's not in here. I'm inside the dry suit, and then I'm inside a really warm sock. And these are tight. They're not going to come off like a boot will, So that's important. For hands, Nancy's going to love this. I'm a big fan of pogies. So pogies are these things that Velcro onto the shaft of your paddle, and your hand goes inside.
Okay.
And they're extremely warm. But the danger with pogies, Mike, is if you fall out of the boat, you got a bare hand in that icy water.
Right.
So I recommend that you wear a glove underneath the pogie as well. A lot of my friends, and I like these too, they wear these toaster mitts, they're called. And it's just a mitten, a neoprene mitten that you wear. And there's a lot of mobility and flexibility, so you can still grab things. These are really great too. On my head, I can't find it, but I basically wear they call it a balaclava. And it's just a really warm, non-cotton headwear, but you could wear a wool hat. And again, you always want backups, because if you fall in the water and that wool hat comes off and floats down the river,
right,
you want to have another one in your kayak. So I'm a big believer on kind of having at least two of everything, right?
Right. No, it makes complete sense. Something Nancy had taught me this year is you carry backup paddles with you in case you roll and you lose a paddle, whatever you've got, or maybe you break a blade, what have you. Is that way you've got a backup.
I've had that happen where I broke a paddle, and thankfully I had another one on deck, and it's always good to have that, just for the reasons that you said.
Okay. So you broke a paddle. One of the questions coming from Sherry Davis is, I was wondering about Mike's worst paddling experience, or has it all been smooth paddling?
I know, I don't know Sherry personally, but she always comments on my posts in one of the groups. So hi, Sherry. I can share my worst paddling experience because I think about it a lot whenever the water gets rough. I was paddling in the Detroit River where it meets Lake Erie. It goes into the lake there. And often we get a south wind that comes up the river. So you have wind going against current, and it creates these crazy waves. And I was out with some friends, and it was around this time of year and around this temperature. And I was pretty new at kayaking. I'd only been doing it for a year. And I was in that blue boat. I was in the tsunami. And we were crossing the river, and the waves were hitting the side of the boat. These were probably 3-foot waves. And what you're supposed to do when that happens is you lean into the wave, because the wave's trying to push you over, and your natural instinct is just to go with it. So you're leaning into it, and I used to do this thing when I'd get scared where I would just paddle really fast. Let's say call it panic paddling when the water would get rough. But that became a problem because I'd get so far ahead of the group that the more experienced paddlers lost sight of me. And if I go in the water, it's going to take them longer to get to me. So that was a scary experience. I didn't go over, but I thought that I was going to. The waves were like I said, 3 foot high and coming in very fast too. So you don't have a breather. You just have to keep paddling. And I had to make sure that my anxiety didn't get so bad that I freaked out and lost my balance.
Okay, speaking of a situation like that, it makes me think of, along with cold water paddling, spray skirt. To me, it just would make sense that you would have something like that to help keep that water from getting into the compartment as well.
Yeah.
Very important piece of gear.
Always have a spray skirt on when you're in the bigger water, definitely, to keep those waves out for sure. It's a really important piece of gear. It also helps insulate you in the boat. One skill that I haven't learned yet is I don't know how to roll, but people that roll, a skirt's important as well to keep the water out. So it's definitely an essential piece of gear. Like I said, for me, it keeps the waves out of the boat, the water out of the boat, and it keeps you extra warm inside that boat as well, too.
All right. And you talked about bringing extra clothes, when you go out. Where would be the best place to store them? Inside the bulkhead or behind the seat? Where would be the
That's
best?
a great question. So I always keep all of my extra clothes in a dry bag, right, just in case. But I put them in the bulkhead in the kayak too. So it's like they're dry, they're not going anywhere, and they're in a big bag that floats if it falls in the water.
Okay, so that way, you got it with you right there.
Yep. Looks like Mike might be grabbing a dry bag.
I don't know, he just does that to me every once in a while, and
He thought I was taking off here. I had to get something here. Let me get back on camera. Dry bag. Yep. This.
So, I have one real similar to that, and in it I have a full change of non-cotton clothes. I mean underwear, socks, pants, shirt, hat, gloves, towel, hot hands, and I also always have a hot thermos of water on the deck of the boat. And the reason for that is if water goes on those hatches, they can freeze shut. So it's important that, if you have some hot water, you can pour over there to break the ice to get in your hatches.
I never thought about that.
Yeah.
I've been on the water before and had waves. I mean, we were out goose hunting and got frozen because the water was splashing up on the boat, and we were against the shore, and my outboard motor froze in the upright position. And I'm like, what do we do now?
Right.
But that never thought about that. That's a good point.
And Kelly Rudell points it out that to put it in perspective when you're out on the water, that a 3-foot wave is over a paddler's head, and when that happens, you cannot see your friends when you're in the bottom of the trough.
Right.
And when you're on the top of it, your paddle probably doesn't hit the water. You're trying to paddle. That's quite a ways. But
What about Mylar emergency blankets?
Those are nice to have too. I didn't bring it in the room with me, but I have something. Oh my gosh, the name's escaping me. Gosh, I can't think of what it's called, but it's basically a garment that I wear that you can wear that fits right over your PFD, right over your dry suit, and it'll keep you warm. Storm Kag. It's called a Storm Kag. And so that's within reach in a dry bag if I need it. But an emergency blanket is a great thing to have too. They're very cheap. You can throw a couple in your boat. I carry a first aid kit in the boat, and there's all sorts of stuff in here. Obviously, there's Tylenol and Motrin, but there's also Vaseline, medical grade tape, the little hot hands things. I'm always adding stuff to it. The other thing, anything that you put on your boat, like on the deck, I always have a bottle of water. You always want to attach it to the deck lines. That way, if you go over it, you don't lose it. Everything, you shouldn't have anything loose. Even this goes inside my life jacket, but it clips onto the life jacket too. Because, if you go over or drop something and it's not attached to you, you're going to lose that.
Well, speaking of going over, cold water. Okay, even if you've got your dry suit on, you got all your gear on, I mean, we've all seen the videos. People fall in the water. I mean, you instantly go. You pretty much go into cold water shock.
Yeah, I had it happen to a friend.
Okay.
So what happens to your body when it hits cold water is you do this thing, it's called the cold shock response, and you can't even help it. Your body immediately wants to go as soon as it feels that cold water. And you know what happens if you do that? You're going to swallow water.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important. One of the things that this is just me, what I always do when I'm paddling in cold water, I always get in my boat in the water anyway, but I like to feel that water. I like to either stick my hands in or put my legs in it just to remind me how cold that water is. So I had a friend go over in winter. I'm not sharing names or anything because he's probably listening. And he went into shock when he hit that cold water. His entire body seized up and he froze. He wasn't moving because that water was so cold. It put him right into shock. So again, it's why I know I'm going against my own advice, but I don't recommend that you go out alone in cold water. If you do, you are taking a risk, and you have to know that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know that I'm taking that risk, and I choose to do that. But it could be it could turn from a really fun day into a deadly day really quick.
And it happens so quick. Okay, so we've fallen overboard. We're in the water. We went into cold water shock.
Yeah.
You've got your two paddle buddies with you because, like you said, you don't go out alone. You try to take more than one person with you.
Yeah.
At that point, okay, so one guy's gonna try to stay safe and maybe call for emergency help if you need it. The other guy's gal's trying to get that person out of the water back into their boat if they can't. Let's say we're on a river and we can get to shore. We get them to shore, get their gear to shore. What's that next step? What do we need to do to make sure they're going to survive?
Get them warm immediately. If they're wearing a dry suit, don't take it off. Hopefully it's not leaking. I recommend taking, and I've done this, take all of your emergency clothes, blankets, everything out and cover the person up. Lay on top of them if necessary. If you have that hot thermos of water, get that in them. Get anything you can in them. Get them some food, a granola bar, anything to get their body temperature up. That's the most important thing, is getting them warm again. Some people carry things to start a small fire. That would work too.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're able to get them out and walk them onto, walk out of the water and get them on shore, you just want to get them warm first and foremost. If you're out on big water, you want to get them back in that boat as quick as possible. And that's a whole nother podcast and discussion that, the assisted rescue and things like that. But that's the goal, is get them back in the boat and paddling again so they warm up.
Well, that plus, that's where those chemical hand warmers come in to play too, right? Those are sealed. You break those out and you just start using those as well.
Definitely, yeah. And again, they're cheap, they're plentiful. I just always have them with my gear in the boat in the winter.
And something we haven't mentioned that I carry with me every time I go, whether it's a river or on the lake. You mentioned getting them back in the boat if you're on big water. You need to make sure you've got a hand pump as well, so you can pump that cockpit dry, or get the water, most of the water out, so you can actually get the thing back upright again.
Yep, everybody should have one of these, and you want to have it on the deck, accessible, or behind your seat, somewhere where you can grab it. You don't want to put it in the hatch.
Right.
It's got to be somewhere where you can grab it. I also recommend a paddle float. This is a nice self-inflatable one. You blow into it, and you put this on your paddle, and this will just help, give you some leverage to get back in the boat. But two essentials that I always have in the cockpit with me when I'm paddling.
Okay. I'll tell you what, we've used up another 15 minutes here. We're going to take our last break. We come back, we'll kind of touch up on a couple things that maybe you want to mention for people who are thinking about going out cold water paddling, and then we'll wrap up the show. So we're going to step outside. We'll be right back after this.
Great talking in the chat.
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff. I have it on my phone.
Yeah, it's going. Kelly Rudolph, Joe Palermo, all good information. Talking about cold water boot camp, and
I got a question I'm going to ask when we come back to kind of lead into the last part of the show here just a little bit. I've got an idea on something here. So,
And Mike, because you got Mike here going and getting his dry bag, he found his hat.
I did.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I found my hat. Yeah, I found the one I've been looking for quite a while, actually. It's like, oh, there it is. Now if I could just find my rangefinder like that for archery season, right, that I've lost. All right, here we go. Stand by in 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back. Last part of the show. We'll spend another 15 minutes or so here trying to help people out to understand and take seriously how the cold water can be fun, but it can also be very dangerous as well.
And it can happen in seconds.
Absolutely. When we go out in the summer, and I got to imagine in the winter, it's just as important, we haven't talked about it yet, is a float plan and letting somebody who is at home, on shore, on dry land, know where you're at, where you're putting in, and where you're supposed to be getting out in an approximate time.
Yeah, that's huge. Always leave a float plan, particularly in winter. But, for me personally, someone always knows where I'm going, how long they expect me to be, all of those things. I check in before I paddle, I check in after I paddle, and of course I always have my cell phone and the backup communication marine radio. Mm-hmm. And, if I say I'm going to be out for 4 hours and it's been 4 hours, my phone starts ringing. Where are you? Is everything okay?
Right.
That happened to me before. So, but a float plan is so important. The other thing I want to talk about is putting one of these stickers in your boat. You can get these at a lot of places, Coast Guard Auxiliary, a lot of the local kayaking stores have them. Kelly Rudolph in our chat, she has these, so she said anybody wants them, you can just contact her. But what this is, it's a sticker that you put inside of your boat with your name and your phone number. Because, if you become separated from your boat and that boat is found later, then it makes it easier for them to get it to you. And if the Coast Guard sees a boat floating out in the water, they're going to assume that something bad's happened. So if there's you know what I mean? Because they don't know. Like,
Yeah, right.
And the other thing, if somebody's rescuing you, like from a boat or something, a lot of times they can't get your kayak. They may just leave it. Their priority is getting you safe, and so it's just an important way to have your boat labeled so they can get a hold of you and know that, yeah, I lost that or whatever. It blew away, it got away from me, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, Danny, if we take you out, I'm going to put one of them stickers on you. That way, if you get lost, somebody finds you and they'll know how to get you back home.
There you go.
Absolutely. And it's good to know Nancy Jackson is spending money left and right now.
That's right. She said this broadcast has cost her a lot of money.
And she's already placed orders, so.
Oh, Lord.
And I think it's important, you guys, to say to people, too, like, cold water paddling isn't for everyone, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. Not everybody has to go out because it is very dangerous. It can be a lot of fun, but it can also be very dangerous. And so I always tell people, don't feel like you have to go out. You can wait until it's warmer. It's not for everyone. So, but if you are going to go out, you should definitely have a little bit of an idea of what you're doing.
Right, yeah, and like we said at the beginning of the show, it's not for beginners. You need to have some kind of sense of the water and have a skill set to be able to go out there before you tackle that cold water. I mean, we've been out duck hunting, and we do it in the worst weather. It's raining, it's cold, snowing, breaking ice. And it's the same thing. I mean, this isn't just for people who are kayaking. I mean, it can be for, like we said, ice fishermen, taking that extra gear with you to stay warm. A dry bag, it doesn't weigh that much. Put it in your jet sled. People who are out duck hunting, same thing. Take some extra clothes and put them in a dry bag.
Unfortunately, you're probably going to hear it that we lose a couple duck hunters because something happened.
Hypothermia. It happens a lot. A friend of mine had a storm roll in, and they had to stay on an island out. I want to say it was out near Charity Islands. Anyway, long story short, it was cold, wet, rainy. They had to sleep under the boat overnight and build a fire there just to stay warm. And it was one of them situations where some of this stuff we're talking about could actually help save you. The radio you talked about, Mike, that's imperative of having something like that if you're out there in bad weather. I use a little app on mine. And we talked about here on the show, Base Map. And what they've come up with here recently on this app is a rescue beacon. You know, I know you're not going to be able to see it here right now. I'm getting people hitting me up real quick. But in the tools menu, there's an icon here that says SOS, and you tap that. It's the same thing like you said. It GPS locator, and it sends that beacon out. And I know they have the handheld ones as well, plus the radio that you have that's invaluable as well.
Couple things to think about the phone that I always tell people too. Don't rely solely on the phone for a couple of reasons. One, the cold kills that battery real quick.
Absolutely.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Two, you could drop it, your hands are wet and slippery. And three, I can't always get my phone to work when my hands are wet. So it's a great tool, but I always say have another tool too. You know, have a radio as well. Again, on the bigger water, you're not going to need this when you're going down, you know, a creek or a back river or whatever.
Right.
But when you're going out on big water, you definitely want to have that backup communication.
Well, you got to be prepared for your situation, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Be prepared for the worst and hope for the best. That's what I like to say. So, you know, we got a few minutes left here. Is there anything that you can think of that we haven't covered that maybe something that you wanted to cover in the chat tonight?
You know, I'm sure I forgot something.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
You know, you talked about the dry suit and layering underneath there. Okay, so you're paddling, and you sound like a pretty fast paddler. So you're going to generate. How should when you're doing that, should you be worried about dehydration?
Well, I always have water. You want to stay hydrated, especially in the cold weather. You don't think about hydration as much. I always carry this 32 ounces of water on the deck, but I always have another 32 ounces in the back. I very rarely drink it, but I almost always drink this. So depending on how long I'm out there, I drink a lot of water anyway. And yeah, when you're paddling hard, you're sweating and you're working, so it is important to make sure you stay hydrated. And also food. I always have in the life jacket, I always have granola bars, nuts, something like that I can eat, and I always have some sort of hot food in the boat. I carry an insulated little lunch thermos, and I'll have soup in there or just some kind of food so I can stop and get some food in me, because that's important too.
All right. You know, we always ask a bunch of 4 questions to our guests, first-time guests, which we're probably not going to be able to get to tonight. But you mentioned food, you mentioned drink, and I kind of told you we were going to ask something similar along these lines towards the end of the show. So one of the questions we always ask is, you know, talking about a favorite meal or something like that. But when you're in the boat, what's your go-to snack? What do you got? You got to have in that boat or your kayak every single time you go out. It's like, I've got to have that snack. What is it?
I'm pretty a simple guy. It's usually some sort of trail mix, you know, something sweet and salty, something with like nuts and M&Ms and raisins in there, because it's just real high energy food. It's easy to eat. You know, I don't even have to stop the boat.
Right, gotcha. Okay, so what about a shore lunch? You guys do shore lunches, or do you eat on the go?
No, we stop and have a lunch, and if it's real cold, it's a quick lunch. But you know, my go-to is I usually do some sort of little box. I love a ham sandwich, you know, and some chips, and then a little veggies and fruit. And I always bring extra food. I very rarely eat all the food that I bring, but the reason why is you never know if something happens and you're going to be out there longer. There's been a couple of times where, you know, something happened and you're out there longer. Food is fuel, so you need to make sure that you stay fueled when you're doing these physical activities.
See, Danny, he brings extra food for the people.
Not you.
You should bring me some extra food.
I know. And when we talked before the show, we found out that you really like venison.
Yes, I love venison.
So, I can ask this question, what is your favorite venison? How would you like it?
Oh, man, the best, in my opinion, is I take backstrap steak, and I just fry it up in the cast iron pan with some butter and olive oil, a little salt and pepper, for about 30 seconds on each side, and it's good to go.
There you go. See, keep it simple. Don't put a lot of stuff on it. Good to go. I like it.
Usually how it works the best.
That's right. Just so everybody knows, we talked about this a little bit before the show. We're going to try to get this guy out and do a little hunting maybe this year.
Well, we better not take Nancy, because she says she's an expert snacker.
That's right. Got to have snacks on the road while you're going kayaking to your spot. You got to have snacks on the way home, but you also have snacks in the boat. So I will say, she comes more prepared for floats than I do. I leave it up to her to pack the lunches and everything. She does a great job at that. I've never, ever been thirsty or hungry on a paddle.
That's great.
She's really good at that. So
She says you paddle so slow, she eats her food too fast.
I like to enjoy the float. Okay, so you paddle a lot down the Detroit River, and we've seen some of the pictures and some of the scenic places that you go. When you're out with a group of people and you're hitting some of those spots that you've been to before, are you a fast paddler? Do you like, come on, let's go, or are you kind of guy that likes to drift along a little bit and just take it in and see the sights?
When I'm with other people, I always go the speed of the group. And I'm not insulting anybody, but it's usually a lot slower than I would go. When I'm on my own, I'm flying. That's just what I like to do. But when I'm with other people, it's social. I love history. I love Detroit history. And I love talking about all the things on the river. And you can ask my friends. I'm always going on and on, whether they want to hear it or not, pointing things out, pointing animals out. So that's kind of, when I'm with a group, I don't leave anybody behind. Even the slowest paddler, not just for safety, but also it's a social thing. You know, you're hanging out with your friends and spending time together. So especially during the pandemic when we really couldn't do anything, we could still paddle. So there were people that was our thing. You know, we hung out while we were kayaking.
Yeah, we got a picture up here right now. You got a good group of people. Looks like it's a Santa hat paddle.
Oh, yeah, that was our Christmas lights paddle. Yeah, we do that. You know, we've done that for a couple years now. We decorate the boats, and that crew there, that's my regular crew of friends. They're all highly skilled, much more skilled than I am. But we have a great time when we hang out. Lots of laughs, lots of good food, and just good energy with each other.
There you go. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. No more brownies, by the way.
There's got to be an inside joke about that.
Oh, yeah, there's an inside joke that's probably not for tonight.
Gotcha. I gotcha.
So you've been like the Energizer Bunny on speed. He does fly. Yeah, you're getting a reputation there, bud.
Yeah, they're hammering you right now on the forum or the chat room here. Okay, hey, before we go, we've got to get in your Facebook page, because that's actually how we found out about you, was through your Facebook group. So
Yeah.
before we go, how can people find you there on that?
Definitely. So look up the group. It's called Paddling Michigan Lakes and Rivers. It's a great group. We've got, I don't know how many people in there now. Nancy does a really good job as moderator. It's a fun group. It's, you know, no judgment. I started it basically so people could meet each other and get to know each other, ask for advice. I've made a lot of good friends out of there. And yeah, it's for anybody who's, even people that aren't in Michigan. We have Ohio people there. We have some of our friends from Canada in there. It's a really nice group of people. So Paddling Michigan Lakes and Rivers.
You know, what I like about people, you know, if you need help on a river, you know, it's like, well, what do you think about this river? Where's a good put in place or take out, or how long did it take you to paddle it? Or even recommendation on a river to hit. And the pictures that people post, it's just incredible of some of the things that we get to see on that forum.
Yeah.
And you got about 1,400 people in that group.
1,400 now.
That's nice. Yeah, I'm really happy that it's grown so much. Like I said, and I'm not putting down any other kayak groups. There's a lot of them out there, but I wanted one that did not have a lot of rules and no judgment and, you know, just fun.
Well, it's the way it should be. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we all do this for. So
If we're not having fun at it, we give up.
right. So.
Exactly.
You know, we got a couple minutes here left before we have to wrap things up. Just trying to think, what is the coolest place that you've paddled? I mean, what stretch or something that sticks in your mind? It's like that's my number one.
I can tell you exactly. My favorite place, and I still have a lot of places I want to paddle, but my favorite place in the whole world to paddle is in the lower Detroit River near Boblo Island. There's several islands in the river there, and there's a place called Crystal Bay. and it's kind of blocked off by limestone rocks that were placed there when they dredged the freighter channel. And the water's crystal clear and deep, and Crystal Bay has all these hidden little lakes in it, and you feel like you're up north. You don't feel like you're in Detroit. It's super peaceful and quiet. You can look out and see Lake Erie, and I love it down there. That's my go-to spot. And then also, my second would probably be Belle Isle. I love to go around Belle Isle. It's a great workout, and you get to see the city of Detroit, and it's just fun exercise.
Yeah, and like you said, exercise. That's another great thing about it is you get a good workout.
Yeah.
You know, especially on rivers that don't have a lot of current. I know Nancy and I, we paddled the Big Manistee, and we did 17 miles on that and out to Lake Michigan. And I want to tell you what, there was current, but there wasn't very much. And 17 miles is a lot of paddling. I was wore out by the time we got done with that one.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it'll wear you out quick. So, Dan, you got anything else?
No, I just Nancy telling hashtag get off my river.
Yeah, the rivers for everyone. I see she asked a question about sharing the rivers with fly fishermen.
Yeah.
You know, the beautiful thing about the water, it belongs to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'm always, when I see fishermen, I try to stay out of their way. I always look for their lines.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I've never had to cut them. I always carry a knife in the life jacket just in case. But, you know, if you get, they'd be mad if you did it, but if you get tangled or something, but it's, you know.
Okay, I'm glad you clarified what you're going to use the knife for.
Yeah. So, like I said, the water's for everyone,
Yep.
and I try to share the water with everybody. And, you know, again, this would be a whole nother podcast, but I could tell you about all the crazy power boaters and stuff like that, and the things that they shouldn't do. But
Yep.
I just feel like in a kayak, we can set a good example by sharing the river and just being nice to other people.
Yeah, you know, my standard rule of thumb, and talking about, you know, fishermen, fly fishermen or what have you, because we do a lot of paddling on the Asabo. And when I see a fisherman ahead, you know, I'm like, hey, right or left, you know, what side do you want me to go on? You know, and let them dictate where they want, what side they want me on, you know, because I don't want to bust a hole on them, you know, and that's what I tell them. I said, you know, I don't want to hit your hole where you're casting to, so you tell me, where do you want me? But there are some people that are a little standoffish, and you know, you just have to, like you said, they don't want to share as well at times, so, you know, we just have to deal with that.
Yeah.
So, you know, and
Can't we all get along?
well, yeah, you know, and I will say, coming from a hunting and fishing perspective, and this is no way knocking any group or anybody, but you know, we as kayakers, really the only fees that we have to pay is our recreational fee of getting into, you know, in and out of a boat launch, you know, on our vehicle. You know, I have heard there's a couple rivers where you have to have a permit here in Michigan.
Yeah, there is, yeah.
You know, so I understand that. But for the most part, the hunters and fishermen of this state, you know, with their license fees, pay for quite a bit of Michigan's natural resources. You know, so I mean, I pay my fair share. I mean, it's a lot of money every year in license fees, but you know, so we got to remember that as well too. That you know, we get to use these resources, and it really doesn't cost us a whole lot. So
Exactly, yeah.
So hats off to those guys for helping us out. So,
Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah, a lot of respect for our outdoorsmen, our hunters and fishermen and women too.
Yep, absolutely. So I tell you what, we're right here. We ought to wrap up the show. Like I said, we could touch on so many other subjects, but it's just a kind of an introductory level to some cold water paddling. There's some things that you need to think about before you just, you know, hey, I'm just going to jump in and I'm going to take the kayak and I'm going to paddle this stretch of river and I'm not going to tip over. Well,
Yeah, well, that's when it all goes wrong.
knock on wood, you know, it happens. I almost lost a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine that I work with about 8-9 years ago. Quick story, him and his son got in kayaks at a friend's house, and I don't remember what river it was. It was up north. There was a foot of snow on the ground, and he dumped and lost the kayak and nearly drowned. He got caught in a log jam and pulled himself up out of it, get out on the opposite side of the river as to where the cabin they were staying in, and had to walk, lost both boots, and had to walk in a foot of snow about a mile back upstream to get help.
Wow, that's scary.
So, don't just think you can hop in and go. And he learned a valuable lesson. And he's still got frostbite. He's lost feeling in his fingers to this day. So, it can happen, people. So, just be safe out there. Anything closing that you want to say before we wrap up?
Just thank you so much for having me on the show. Hopefully the viewers enjoyed it, and I would encourage everybody to join that Facebook group, because there's so many great experts. There are people like Kelly and other friends of mine that are certified instructors and trainers and are very passionate about safety, and they're willing to help anybody out. So I would recommend to join that group, Paddling Michigan Lakes and Rivers.
We got the name of it up right now here on the Facebook page, so make sure you go over and check that out and join. I'm telling you, it's a great bunch of people over there. And we're going to sign off now, but Mike, when we get done, hang on, we'll chat a little bit here right after the show. But for those of you who listen on the podcast, as we've always said here before, go over to iTunes. If you're listening on iTunes, give us a review. It helps us, helps the people who support us as well. And, take and share the show, if you would, on your social media pages. Make sure you go over to Mike's social media pages, give him a like, follow, share as well, and ours as well, if you would, please. And for those of you who are watching the show, we ask the same thing. This is some great information. Hopefully, somewhere down the road, it keeps somebody from losing their life. I mean, that's the important thing. We want everybody to have fun, but you need to be safe out there. So, and before we wrap up here, Danny, next week,
You have the author from the book that you were reading?
Bill Frederick from the Hunting Cabin, or the Hunting Camp. I got the book. It's somewhere here in the house. I don't have it with me, but we're going to have Bill on next week. Author of that book that we've been promoting. He's going to come on. We're going to talk about his hunting camp and the whole history behind that, and how he got to write the book, and obviously we're going to talk about what's in the book as well. So,
all right, sounds like a fun evening.
So next Thursday night, 7:30, make sure you tune in. But that's going to do it for this week. Mike, once again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Great information, and we got to get you on again here soon.
Thanks, guys. I'd like that.
All right, take care, and we'll see everybody here next week.